Welcome you to our July 23rd, 2024 Board of Education meeting. We are calling the meeting to order, and it is 7:01 PM. And if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. A reading of meeting notice. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Verona Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published in the Star Ledger, posted with the Township of Verona and the Verona Education Association. Posting of this meeting, setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public via the Board of Education website. Mr. Cruz, if you could please call attendance.
Mr. Walker,
Present.
Mrs. Brazella,
Here.
Mrs. Farrar,
Here.
Mrs. Prisco,
Here.
Mr. Boone.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to our agenda, I need a motion, please, to approve our minutes, resolution A1.
Moved.
So
I'll
moved by
second.
Mr. Waka, seconded by Mrs. Brazella. Are there any discussions? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Brazella,
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to our superintendent's report, Ms. Diane Giuseppe.
Good evening. I have a couple of things to discuss tonight, but I want to start out with the exciting one, the fun one. So tonight we have two students with us that both reached the esteemed rank of Eagle Scout, and we just would love to make a proclamation to both of them. So going in alpha order, just to keep it fair. The proclamation, the first one is to Christopher Caldera. And whereas the Verona Board of Education recognizes and celebrates the achievements of its students, and whereas achieving the rare and prestigious rank of Eagle Scout is a testament to dedication, leadership, and service to both community and country, and whereas Christopher Caldera, a student at Verona High School, has exemplified these qualities and has earned the esteemed rank of Eagle Scout. Therefore, it is proclaimed that the Board of Education acknowledges and commends Chris for his outstanding achievement and commitment to the principles of Scouting. Be it further proclaimed that the Verona Board of Ed extends its sincerest congratulations to Chris for his perseverance, leadership, and dedication to excellence as demonstrated through his attainment of remarkable accomplishment in earning the rank of Eagle Scout. Congratulations, Chris. Now, our second esteemed Eagle Scout is Luca Tedesco. Whereas the Verona Board of Education recognizes and celebrates the achievements of its students, and whereas achieving the rare and prestigious rank of Eagle Scout is a testament to dedication, leadership, and service to both community and country, and whereas Luca Tedesco, a student of the Verona High School, has exemplified these qualities and has earned the esteemed rank of Eagle Scout. Therefore, it is proclaimed that the Board of Education acknowledges and commends Luca for his outstanding achievement and commitment to the principles of Scouting. Be it further proclaimed that the Verona Board of Education extends its sincere congratulations to Luca for his perseverance, leadership, and dedication to excellence as demonstrated through his attainment of the remarkable accomplishment in earning the rank of Eagle Scout. Congratulations, Luca.
If I may comment,
course.
I'm probably ethically should recuse myself, but I'm gonna go ahead here. This is particularly moving for me as well. I know both of these two young men from the time they were Cub Scouts and going to some of our summer camps. I know the Troop 2 here in Verona is going on summer camp at the end of this week. And just reflecting on that, persevering through storms, runs to the hospital, a mini tornado. What else? Snakes. And then when we don't have snakes, we have bears. The troop here and the Cub Scout packs in Verona are amazing. And that the work that these young men and hopefully future young women will be putting through is really extraordinary. And for as small of a town as Verona has, to see the number of Eagle Scouts that we have seen come through is just a testament to the dedication of the people here and the role that Verona schools have in helping foster that and encouraging that really means a lot to me. So watching you two grow up, it really will be something that I remember, and I wish you all the best going forward. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Yes, congratulations again to both of you boys on your wonderful accomplishments and for representing Verona so well. I wish you both the best in your college experiences and make sure you always come back and visit us. So congratulations again to you and your families. And then you have your report,
I
right?
do. So the first component of my report, and Mr. Fiducia, I was able to share my screen. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to, so I can take it, is the required graduation report. And so before I get into the actual report, just to go over what New Jersey requires with regard to graduation, there's several components. So New Jersey requires at least 120 credits in specific areas to graduate. They also allow for school districts to increase that number of credits per board policy. So many years ago, Verona Board Policy 5460, high school graduation, requires 130 credits in specific areas to graduate. So those specific areas are English, language arts, math, which includes a requirement of Algebra 1 and geometry, and one course of higher math, laboratory science, which requires biology, and then a second course in chem, environmental science, or physics, and one more lab science. Social studies, actually the requirements here are world history, civics, and US 1 and 2. Financial literacy, physical education and health, visual and performing arts, world languages, and 21st century life and careers, as well as technology interspersed. Technology is the only one that doesn't have a specific credit requirement, but the technology standards are supposed to be addressed throughout the, this actually comes out to 97.5 credits. And then the state recognizes that students will have elective opportunities to get them to the 120. Our students don't have any problem getting to the 130 because we offer a variety of interesting electives for them. So the second component, and I'm condensing this because it's a little bit more complicated than that, but a passing score on a statutory state assessment. So this last year, our students were in the pilot group. So the 2023 graduates were not required to pass that state assessment. This is the first year that students in New Jersey are required to pass the New Jersey graduation assessment, or the NJGPA, graduation proficiency assessment, I'm sorry. And it's interesting because there's a battle in the legislature and at the Department of Education, the State Department of Board of Education, as to whether or not that test is even going to continue. So we don't know how long we're going to have that test in place, but right now you are required to sit for and pass both sections, math and language arts, on that test, or a substitute competency assessment, which is like PSAT, SAT. There's a whole list of competency assessments that can be substituted for that. The caveat with that is you can't, if you take the PSAT and you make the cut scores to pass, but you don't sit for the NJGPA, it doesn't get you graduated. So you have to at least sit for the NJGPA and then do well on any number of those substitute competency assessments. If you don't have the substitute competency assessment and you didn't pass the NJGPA, you can also do a portfolio appeal, which is really a long process of students working with individual teachers to demonstrate that they've met the New Jersey student learning standards in English language arts, Algebra 1, and geometry. So that's kind of three pathways. One pathway, you score the test, you just get the requisite cut scores on the test. Second pathway is a substitute assessment. Third pathway is by doing a portfolio. And then there's local attendance requirements. And if anyone is interested, board policy or the VHS academic program has the specific number of credits in each subject area. So I'm required under board policy and 18A to report annually at a public meeting no later than September 30th. So we thought we'd just kill it early on, get it out of the way. So I'm supposed to report on the number of students who graduated, the number of students that graduated under the substitute competency test process, the number of students who graduated under the portfolio appeals process, the number of students receiving a state endorsed high school diploma as a result of meeting any alternative requirements for graduation as specified in their individualized education program or IEP, the total number of students denied graduation from the 12th grade class, and the total number of students denied for the reasons of not meeting A, B, C, or D, or A, B, and C. The only other way a student can be denied graduation is if they don't meet the attendance requirement. So just to go through this, the total number of students that graduated from Verona High School in June of 2024, I have to look at my paper because the Zoom thing is in front of it, is 175. That was 168 VHS graduates and then 7 students that were placed in out of district placements that met the graduation requirements. The number of students that graduated under the substitute competency test process were 39. We had 18 students graduate using the portfolio appeals process. 8 students, 1 VHS graduate, and 7 out of district students met their state required or state endorsed diploma as a result of an alternative requirement specified in an IEP. We had 1 student that was denied graduation from the 12th grade class. And but that student is working on a summer portfolio appeal, and we anticipate graduation in August 2024, which keeps that student in their cohort. So we are working on, we just tested a whole group of kids from the 11th grade that did not pass either one or both of the NJGPA on a summer administration of that test again. They will have one more chance in the fall. We're hoping they all pass. They didn't all take it. Dr. Miller has those numbers. What, had like 11 that showed up? Yeah, so the other half will take it again in the fall. Okay. Let me just unshare. So summer in Verona School District is extremely busy. From the end of June into the first 2 weeks in July are reserved for the closeout of the prior year. Reports are filed with the Department of Education. Financials are closed out, and we start planning for the next school year. So you'll notice on tonight's agenda where we are approving some curriculum writing. We have been approving lots of purchase order requisitions for supplies and resources to support those curriculum and programs. Our maintenance staff is busy cleaning and getting the schools ready for open, preparing classrooms, and staffing. The most important thing we do is staff. Research clearly shows that that's where you put your effort into hiring as best the staff that we can find. So there are 4 categories of staff in school districts: teachers, other certificated staff, which are school nurses, child study teams, school counselors, media specialists, etc. and administration and support staff, which can be anything from custodians, administrative assistants, paraprofessionals, substitutes, cafeteria aides, etc. So the good news is we are almost completely staffed with regard to teachers and other certificated staff. We have 3 positions that are still open. One of them we have final interview for tomorrow for a business education teacher at Verona High School. And we are still looking for special education English and a Spanish leave replacement, 2 very difficult positions to find. We think we may be able to cover the Spanish leave replacement with 6-period assignments because that teacher returns in January. We do still need support staff, especially paraprofessionals and substitutes. Although I'm very happy to report, and Mr. Cruz is also probably very happy to report that we are reducing our reliance on agency paraprofessionals. We've begun to hire many more paras. It's been Mrs. Simmons working very diligently to make sure that we are finding people because while agency paras are available to us, they're more expensive than a Verona Schools paraprofessional. And we still have 1 opening for the administrative assistant at FM Brown, but I know Dr. Lanzo is actively interviewing now. Just a reminder that we will have policies on our next board agenda, and one of them will be the student attendance policy, which is going to correct some of those errors that have been kind of perpetuated here for a while. I'm not sure when that policy was written initially, but it's been at least since 2018. And it's led to some chronic absenteeism that we need to clear up. Again, like Mr. Walker said, when we talked about this last time, if you're sick, we want you to stay home. But our policy allows for parents to take their kids on vacation and get excused absences. That's not what we want to perpetuate. And I have a quick security update. So I met with a representative from CRG, which is Critical Response Group. If you recall, my first year here, we partnered with the state of New Jersey, actually paid for this. We partnered with CRG to upload interactive maps of all of our schools that would be available not only to our own police officers in a crisis, but also to any surrounding law enforcement agency that would be responding to a crisis in Verona schools. So they've been done. One of the reasons it took so long is that there's been so many referendum projects. No one had like really updated building maps for any of our buildings. So finding a map that was complete enough to make this project actually functional. So once we got that to them, now we're experiencing a little bit of a software issue with getting those maps uploaded. I think Mr. Balaj, when he gets back from vacation, has a good solution for that, though. I'm waiting for quotes on some consultants. If you recall, at the last meeting, Mrs. Farrar asked me to get some information about potential consultants to come out and, help us review our plans and review our physical plant. I received one. It is for $35,000. I didn't think it was going to be an inexpensive. I suspect that the others that I'm waiting for will be similar in cost. Alternatively, I can request the Office of School Preparedness and Security Planning, which is a joint division between the NJDOE and Homeland Security, send a field service rep to us and have them help us assist in assessing our plan and process, as well as our physical campuses. Now, that's obviously going to be a lot less expensive. It also is difficult because there's only 3 reps, one for Northern Jersey, one for Central Jersey, and one for South Jersey. There was something that I came across, though, in doing my research. So NJDOE and the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness have identified a site assess tool. It's a free app that you can use to assess your own building and plan. It's put out by REMS, which is the Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools Technical Assistance Office. So I'm looking into what that entails and how much training it requires to do it effectively. And with my meeting with CRG, the representative offered to come out and do tabletop exercises with our administrative team and with the district safety personnel. So what a tabletop exercise is they present a scenario to you and you work through how you would respond to it. And it's like practice for things that I mean, we do lockdown drill every month, right? We do those drills, but it's kind of absence of scenarios. So that we're going to take them up on because they offered it for free.
Question about that. That's not just like your typical school shooter coming, that's like chemical spill
Anything.
in the
Yes.
chemistry lab, and what do we do? Or fire in
Yes.
the gym.
Um,
Okay.
in another district, one of the tabletop had to do with a teacher who had a physical disability and how are they going to get that person out of the building in case of an emergency? So anything like that could be considered a tabletop. So that's my report for this evening.
I just have a couple of questions. I'm sorry. To follow up on the safety issue, is there any additional consulting help we can get from the town police department, or is that just not something that they do? Or
I mean, the Verona Police is always very helpful. They attend our drills,
Right.
they provide support. We have I mean, Chief Kiernan went over our plan and he signs it, so they do that. I think just the concerns with regard to whether, I think what Mrs. Farrar's concerns with, and are you with her? You can speak to that. And Mrs. Barzella's concerns is we have these plans and they weren't followed. And as a result, we had someone enter our schools. We know that doors need to be locked at all times, regardless of
More
whether
of an
there's kids in
enforcement.
there, and they weren't. So, like, that's going to be my job to make sure, okay, we worked really hard on getting these very comprehensive plans. Do our staff know them? And are our administrators in the buildings following them?
And if a person is not, if habitually not following safety protocol, are they being counseled appropriately?
Well, we now have three trained safety specialists in district. I was trained, that's a 4 full day training. Mrs. Palmarese was trained and Mr. Merkler was trained. So we have you're only required to have one. Okay,
never have too many.
you can never have too many.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, you go ahead now.
I just had a question about the graduation, the NJ GPA and the graduation rate. If I did my back of the napkin math correctly, it looks, listen, it looks like about 33% of the graduates that just graduated either required the alternative assessment or the
The portfolio, Yeah.
yeah.
too high.
Yeah, do we have assuming that this is the way the state goes, which do we have plans in place other than keeping kids to take the test over
Yes,
and over to address that?
Part of our strategic plan, and I think part of the issue that we experienced this year is we introduced in September an unpacking the standards exercises for our teachers, and we're very surprised at how much they needed that. And again, we have great teachers. This is not, I'm not impugning them. We have an obligation as administrators to make sure that they know where the standards are and they know what they are, and that they know not just this is the standard, what does that look like in a classroom, and at what rigor level is the standard written? Because if the rigor level of the standard is up here and you're teaching it here, you're teaching it, but are you teaching it enough where kids are going to actually do well on it? That's first and foremost, and we're going to be working on that for the next several years. It's not a one-year thing. Second, we have to impress upon our students the importance of NJGPA because it hasn't counted for so long. Our students have not, and not just us, this is across the state, have not taken that test seriously. So, we are really trying to create an environment where it's important. We haven't had a graduation requirement ever. I mean, HSPT, which I think I took.
So to that end, taking it seriously, and you mentioned right now, there's alternate path so that you could use SAT, but I know you're still expected to sit. And, my suspicion is that the students, so this is a two-pronged question, I guess. Students that take the SAT, ACT, when they go in and take that test, they're just what am I doing here is the approach. Using a crystal ball, and these are the two questions. One, do you see there becoming a time where the state says, okay, it's an either or? So if you do the SAT, ACT, you don't have to sit. And then the second question is, what is the requirement? What's the bar, the threshold for the SAT, ACT, if that were to happen?
You know, that's a good question, and I don't have that information right in front of me. I can get it for you, what the cut scores for each of those tests are. The cut score for NJGPA is a 725, which is a high bar. The issue with GPA is that it's testing kids on material that they may have learned 3 years ago. And it's not that they're not related, and geometry and algebra are related, but you can actually do really well in the algebra section and not well on the geometry section and not make the cut score. So your first question is, what's the chance that the state is going to say if you take SAT, you don't have to take GPA? Considering there's such a war over GPA, that could happen. We know when Park was a part of our lives. I have to say Park is, for those people that hated Park raised the bar on assessments because the HSPT was a minimum basic skills test. It was a bad test. And when Park came in, by making those questions really rigorous, I mean, when we first looked at those, some of my teachers in my former district couldn't answer them. And it wasn't because they were poorly written, it's just that they were really rigorous. They took a lot of thought. So when Park came in, it really raised the level of rigor in our teaching. Because I remember being in the commissioner's convocation the year that Park was going to be given for the first time as a practice test, not practice, but as a pilot test. And you know, they always told us you shouldn't teach to a test, don't teach to the test, don't teach to the test, don't teach to the test. And Tracy Severance, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Education at that time, said, this is a test you want to teach to. Because this is a test that if you're teaching to it, kids are learning. So it was an interesting take. And they did at some point say, if you're taking the AP English literature or AP lit language, you were and you did well, you were exempt from taking Park. So they have done that before. So I can see it happening again. This whole GPA thing came out of the fact that New Jersey changed the rules along the way and circumvented the law. So the Department of Ed.
Their own law.
No, the federal law.
Oh,
Yeah, so GPA is required under No Child, no, I was gonna say No Child Left Behind. Formerly No Child Left Behind, now is Every Student Succeeds Act. And the fact that we get money from that means we have to follow the federal law, and we weren't. So have to see how they're gonna circumvent it next time.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm really happy we have a new student rep here, but I don't know who he is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, he's gonna speak, so we were gonna introduce him. Okay. Do you want to introduce?
Can I just circle to, I'm sorry,
Sure.
can you hear me? I just want to circle back really quickly to security before we move on.
I forgot you were here, Mrs. Farrar.
Sorry, no, I'm here. I hope that everyone can hear me. So I think that obviously excuse me, the 35K is a heavy cost. I'd still be interested to see what the other consultants come back in and kind of what they're offering for that. But I think that the tabletop exercises are a really good place for us to start, especially because they'll give us the practice we need without cost. And then, you know, the fact that we have the 3 security specialists in district, I'm wondering if through the tabletop exercises and our own anecdotal notes, we can utilize and leverage the district security specialists to kind of turnkey this out to teachers to ensure that we're seeing a regular PD where we see fit or where we think needed. If that's kind of a place maybe that we can start for much less cost than obviously a consultant would be.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. I think the tabletop exercises, and there's also another organization that I actually used when we were making our plans. It's got a weird name. It's called I Love You Guys. And they're a phenomenal organization. They don't do consulting, but they do training. Their trainings are either half day or full day. And they focus on two things: plan development and crisis response and reunification. And if there's any place that almost every school district across the country needs help with, it's how to reunify, because it's really hard to practice.
I think that sounds great because I think like anything else, right? We all can get, myself included, right? We get like kind of lackadaisical with things, and then we, hear something happens and it kind of triggers back something, and we're reminded of kind of how to, keep security high. So I think if we're able to bring those agencies in for that support, it would be a great place for us to start. And again, to kind of just keep the momentum consistent and moving to support the teachers and
Right.
administrators.
And we all know that when you do a drill once a month, it becomes ubiquitous, and people just, it does become part of your canvas of what you know and do. It becomes almost like muscle memory to just, everybody lock down.
Right.
And yeah, so I agree. Thank you, Mrs. Farrar.
I just wanted to touch also on security as well. I think when we spoke about this probably about a year ago, Diane, you had mentioned reaching out to, I think his name is Mike Pilardi from Milburn, because they have a really, really incredible system with cameras
They
and
do.
screens. Is there any way we can maybe reach out to him and see who maybe he has a contact of a company?
Well, he's a specialist himself, so I don't
I
know,
thought
but
so,
yeah,
okay.
he's a security specialist.
Okay,
So he runs their security program. They just added a whole another level of security personnel in their district.
mhm.
I actually we had two different meetings set up. He canceled one, I canceled the other, and we have not gotten together, but I can reach out to him. They have a
Okay.
new superintendent over there too.
Okay,
In
great.
Melbourne.
I just remember you speaking about him, and I know of him. So it would be nice to maybe get his ideas,
take. Yep,
because I hear
we
that
do
they
that.
have a really great system there.
They spend a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, I think that-
35,000's a bargain.
Right, I know. I think that if we are going to, eventually down the road, look to do something, we want to do it the best we can possibly do it for,
To do it the right way.
right. Yeah.
And not throw good money after bad at a system that's not gonna meet our
Correct.
needs.
Yeah.
Correct.
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our agenda, so I'm going to just skip real quick, Mr. Miller, if you don't mind. I'm just going to go and introduce our student rep, our temporary student rep, who's filling in until when the elections in October, probably September, October. So this is Jack Latson. Jack will be a senior. So welcome, Jack. If you have anything you would like to report out on, please feel free. Just press the button and it'll turn green. Thanks, Jack, for being here.
Okay, so I have two things to report on. So on Monday, June 17th, VHS hosted a senior field day for all the graduating seniors that was run by last year's school president and vice president, Shay Haggerty and Gabby Ignazzo. They did a great job planning the event, and the day featured many relay races, tug of wars, and a powder puff game, among many other things. And then on a little bit of a more personal note, from May 29th to June 10th, my brother and I ran a district-wide toiletry drive at all 6 of the schools, as well as the Verona Public Library. We collected over 1,000 donations, which have all now been distributed to the food pantry at the Episcopal Church of the Holy Spirit, the Human Needs Food Pantry, Bridges Outreach, and Tony's Kitchen. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who donated. This drive wouldn't have been possible without the support of the community and the Verona Schools Administration.
And you and your brother for organizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know those places that you cited, Jack, are very, very in need and do a lot of impact around the entire county. So thank you for contributing.
And
Yeah.
thank you for being
Thank you.
here on
Yeah.
a night out
Yeah.
of your life.
Thank you very much, Jack. And moving on to our agenda, we have Mr. Dr. Charlie Miller here, our Director of Curriculum, to go do his presentation.
NJGPA.
Good evening, everyone, and I think we've talked a lot about this already, but we are under state guidelines to report this by August 15th, so our next board meeting in August is after that, so we'll talk about that tonight. We made a short slideshow. Welcome everyone here and our viewing audience. So here we go. Yeah, give me 1 second so that, okay. We're good now? All right, here we go. So as we talked about before, this is, we have to follow the law NJSA 18A. So it's administered to all grade 11 students. It's the ELA and math. I'll make this brief because Ms. Giuseppe already went over this in pretty good detail, but like this, our juniors take it, but it measures the language arts grade 10 standards, and math is algebra and geometry. And yes, some of our students take it as early as middle school. On May 3rd, the cut score was changed from a 750 to a 725 for both the ELA and for the math. And for this year, I'll show you the results, but this year we had students, Mr. Merkler and I had students come in on Monday and today. 7 students yesterday and 8 students today for math, so language arts, and for math to retake the assessment this morning. So thank you, students, for coming in on a summer day. So they took 2 sections of language arts yesterday and 2 sections of mathematics today. And like Mr. Giuseppe said, if they don't meet that cut score, we do have substitute competency tests. They can take the ACT, SAT, PSAT. We administer every October. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then if all else does not work for our students, we will do a portfolio process, and that will start in January. Good news is that we got results back today. Our summer student did pass. So that's good. So that counts towards our graduation. This is just an example in case you don't know what it looks like. This is the front of the NJGPA individual student report. On the left is language arts and on the right is mathematics. The student's name is blocked out for privacy purposes. Again, 725 is passing. This student received a 759, so they are graduation ready. And mathematics, they received a 763 and they are graduation ready. On the back, on the top, we have the reading and writing results, and it breaks down. The legend at the bottom says an exclamation means not yet. The arrows going 2 different directions is at or near passing, and the check means above. So this student was proficient with literary, text, informational, and vocabulary. Under the writing, they're at that at or near for written expression and for knowledge and language of conventions. On the lower part of the back of the report that our parents received, again, you have your same legend for mathematics, major content, expressing mathematical reasoning. This student is not meeting that yet. I will cite Carol Dweck, not yet means that they eventually will. Additional and supporting content is a check, and modeling and application. So this is what the parents see on the back. Going into some bar graphs, for the last 2 years for the NJGPA ELA results, the 2 left are Verona and the 2 right are, yeah, if you could slide that, thank you. So we have Verona and language arts, 85% of our students approximately last spring met 725 or higher. This past year, these are different students, but 93% met. Compared to the state, which was 80.5 2 years ago. And then this past spring, we increased 8.6% from the year before, and the state did a 1.1. Again, different students, but looking at it statistically. When we have to break down our results into our subgroups, the subgroups have to be greater than 10. You'll see green is good. So for most of our groups, the green is very high. I drew a bar for about 2/3 for our students with IEPs passed as well. So that's really exciting news. And then I just taking away the percentages, these are our number of students. So when you see female and male, these are the actual numbers who passed with a 725 or higher or who did not. So again, very small numbers for language arts. If you look at the average scale score, in 2023, we were 767, and then this past spring, we were 782, so that's a 15-point increase. If you look at the state, they had a 2-point increase. When we look at the GPA disaggregated results for the average scale score, you will notice that 725 is the passing score, and orange represents this year. So all of the results are higher for the scale scores, which is excellent news. When we go to mathematics, we have in 23 and 24 for Verona an increase of 7.6%, and the state had a negative 0.3%, a decrease actually. So we're pretty proud of that. Our kids are working hard as well as our teachers. And I would say some parents that are trying math at home with their children. For the math disaggregated results, we have our male and female results, and then our other subgroups. The one group that we still work on is our students with IEPs. Testing algebra and geometry is proving difficult for some of our students. But we'll have a little remedy, but we'll talk about what we'll continue to do at the end. And Mr. Di Giuseppe mentioned some of that in her report. When we go to our average scale scores, we had an increase of 8 points from 2 springs ago to this spring, and the state had an average increase of 1. So it looks like we are starting to perform even better, and that's our goal, is to get better every year. The disaggregated average scale score. So purple is 2023, and the orange is the past spring. And again, 725 is the past score. All groups are meeting that except for our students. Some of our students have an IEP. Notable achievements, again, our 2024 ELA graduation ready scores were 8.6 point increase, while New Jersey was only 1.1. Students with IEPs, the scale score went from 713 to 742. And in mathematics, we increased 7.6%, while the state went down slightly, like a little less than half a point. Areas to focus on will be mathematics, with our students with IEPs particularly. Next steps. So what we already worked on the first step. So our students who are seniors this year, already an opportunity to take the NJGPA again. So we'll wait. Hopefully we'll get the results back sooner than later, so we will know. We will continue, like we started last year, to focus on unpacking the math standards along with all of our other standards. But for this test, our math standards, create appropriate learning targets. We will be doing lesson planning in Atlas, all of our teachers. So this will be really exciting to see this real time. And then eventually working on matching our assessments so that they match the targets as well as what the standards say. If we can do all three, like Mr. Giuseppe said, then we will experience more success. Review district evidence analysis statements in mathematics. I was going to put an example up, but the state does not allow us to show the picture. We can only do that between administrators and with some teachers. But I did give an example of one thing that we could focus on for our NJGPA math, but it is vast. It's solving quadratic equations in one variables. There are many different ways to do that, and it depends. There's many different levels at which to. But if you're interested, I'll post this. You can click on that. If you're bored, we can work on that later. That stuff excites me, so I like that stuff. And then we have created a math lab with our administrative team at the high school, along with our director of counseling, Mrs. Ackerman, to work on students we anticipate who may have a hard time with the test in March. We're going to offer this for them in the first semester to work on topics and areas to bring them back up to the level so that they're prepared for the test. So that is new for us.
And we're also using MAP
Yes, yeah, that is correct. And we're using MAP for our algebra and geometry students.
at the high school.
Correct. Thank you. And then that's all that I had. I tried to keep it short. I know you were talking a lot about it. Yes.
I'm so
Please ask questions.
sorry to be a buzzkill. I do have a couple questions.
Yeah, sure. You want me to go back to certain slides?
Perhaps, but
Okay.
these might be general enough.
Sure.
In seeing them quickly, I don't think I loved what I saw with the Hispanic
Right.
numbers and the Hispanic success. So
Yes.
I think I saw that in 2 spots.
Right. Back here. That was one.
Yeah.
Disaggregated.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was one of them.
Yep.
I know the sample size isn't huge, but
No.
percentage wise, it is concerning.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question there twofold. Do we have a sense of why that is, and what are we doing to try to improve on that?
Yeah, sure. When you see that, I think all of our teachers, especially if we're using MAP, we can see that ahead of time because it pulls it out like students individually. We don't look at them split up like this when we're teaching. But if we were to see something like this and we share these results with our teachers, we, in a way, flag the students to say, like, look out for who these students are. MAP will tell us this result will tell us this, and ultimately teaching and assessing students will tell us this. But it's really differentiation. It means if the student isn't performing at that ability, can we reassess the student? Would be one thing you can do. We've made that more of a common practice. If you don't do well in assessment, there's an opportunity to do corrections or to try it again. Because is the goal to get a certain score, or is it to learn the material?
And are these students, are they dropping into the district later, or have they been with the district?
That's a great question. I don't have that answer yet. That's a great question though.
I'd be curious to see where that's.
Yes.
The other question, this is probably really pedantic, but when we were talking about percent increases, were we talking percentage points or actual percent?
Percentage points. So if
Okay.
I go back to
Thank you.
here, again, they're different groups of students. But overall, like 2/3 of our students in 23 passed math, whereas about a little more than 7 out of 10 students passed. So the percentage increased. And I tried to show, I don't know if I did on every slide. I tried putting actual numbers there as well. Like, so these are actual numbers for math. If I back up to language arts, because sometimes a lot of our samples are smaller than 100, especially when we present NJ, SLA, like some of our schools are really small. So you would see the same thing here. So you can see the real numbers sometimes when you see the percentages. Sometimes the numbers tell us, sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, like 65%, but that's like, 17 out of 26. I always say this is one measure of assessment, but I think as we continue to unpack standards and to make lesson plans visible for all through like an atlas and connecting with assessments, these will only go up. There is some things that Mr. Giuseppe mentioned too. Some kids we find don't take tests as seriously as they should. They come in and they maybe didn't get a good night's sleep, and I think when they come in the summer, their parents are like, so we hope the word gets out. That's like, yeah, just take it seriously in March. And then you won't have to come in the summer and take the assessment again. And there are some students, to be honest with you, if you look at their IEP, they are at a much lower grade level identifier than an 11th grade. Some are not at that level, and we're trying to get them there.
Can we go and look at the slide where you had the percentages? I'm sorry.
Or which one? A certain subject or?
I guess the English.
Okay, so we have percentages here.
Like the ones that it compared us to this.
Oh, to the state?
The state, yeah.
Sure.
Okay,
That's the scale score.
yeah, and then didn't you have one with?
Yeah, I did. So that would be right here. This is Verona and that's New Jersey. Up to the right. So we have Verona scores and we have the New Jersey.
Okay, 'cause
So-
I mean, I'm happy that we're above state average. I think
Close though.
it's a little too close for my comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 93% is I think pretty good for our students passing. Of course we want it to be higher. But when you break it and then when you disaggregate it, you'll notice some groups are stronger than others.
IEP and even the 504 students.
Mhm.
A 504 student, that's a kid who could have a hand issue.
Right.
Cognitive is not necessarily. I mean,
Agreed.
even an IEP student doesn't necessarily have a cognitive disability.
Not always.
Right.
Mm-mm.
So
Agreed.
I think that there's a lot we're missing there. And we need to figure out what's going on. Is it students who get extra time or not taking their extra time? Like happened with my daughter.
Sometimes.
Because she wanted to go to lunch. Is it, is there
Yes.
other reasons why these students are not doing well on this test? And
On the standardized test, though, not using their extra time is not necessarily an option because they're required to sit there for the entire extra time,
yeah.
regardless of whether they're taking the test or not.
Mhm.
So that could be a motivation. I don't feel like taking this test anymore,
Right.
but
We do have students who don't utilize all their time. We had it today with giving some of our students, there was 90 minutes for each section and some students were done both sections before 90 minutes.
And can we just look at the math one
Sure.
as well?
Here's math.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like there, I mean, again, we're looking at 72,
Yep.
73,
Mhm.
that's a C.
Well,
That's
and it's in our current grade scale, it is.
Yeah, that's a C.
Yep.
Yep. I
We all would like to do better.
think we need to do better.
I think, can I jump into, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I can't see if anybody was getting ready to talk.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead, go ahead.
I think too that, in listening, we're very, and Mr. Giuseppe mentioned this earlier as well, and I think it was touched upon a little bit. but we're very assessment heavy in kind of the thinking of, you know, switching the assessments or giving students an opportunity to be reassessed. And I believe wholeheartedly in assessments, but I think that, you know, when we're looking to make the numbers move, we have to look at what are those assessments telling us and then talk about how the instruction is being supported. So how we're supporting the teachers in looking at this data and then determining what the students need and then changing the instructional approach, or else we're just going to continue to see the same numbers, if that
No,
makes
I
sense.
can't give it away because it's still embargoed, but I do want to point out that at the high school this year, last year's NJ SLA scores in Algebra 1 were absolutely dismal.
Mhm.
I mean, really
Yep.
not
Yeah.
good. Like under 20% of our kids passed. So we formed a professional learning community to go to Mrs. Ferrara's point. Our two algebra teachers really focused significantly on looking where our students were missing the mark. Why were they missing the mark? How is our curriculum supportive? Is our curriculum aligned properly?
Mhm.
Does it move through the curriculum appropriately? Does our curriculum hit all the standards? And we saw a huge jump
Mhm.
in algebra scores this year. Now, again, they're different kids,
Right.
but our algebra scores have been not great from group to group to group to group. We saw a marked difference this year, and I can't tell you that change yet because they're still embargoed, but
Right.
when Dr. Miller's back here in a month or
Yep.
so to
Yeah,
do the
we,
NJSLA. So we've seen where when you focus,
Mhm.
and now those same two teachers
Yep.
teach geometry, right?
Mhm.
They didn't focus in the same way on the geometry, and we didn't see as big a bump in the geometry scores. So the power of professional learning communities, the power of teachers working together, looking at student data, understanding the standards,
Mhm.
understanding how the standards relate into a curriculum document, and understanding and coming together and making decisions about what instruction supports this makes a difference. We've seen it.
Yep.
So that's
Absolutely.
gonna be
Thank
our
you.
focus. Yeah.
Thank you.
To kind of follow on that too, the NJGPA is taken when exactly?
March.
March. So I think there is some evangelizing of the importance to the students that needs to continue, because at that point, particularly for June, on the ACT, they're burnt on getting ready for their AP exams for those that take AP. So it's, as Ms. Ferrara was saying, we're assessment heavy, and so this one in the area of priorities in the students' minds, I'm not saying that the reality, they're like, I'm done.
Mhm.
And so I just don't know how.
It would be helpful if, I mean, my opinion, if they gave it in June after they're done with geometry. Like they wait,
And
Oh,
of
like
course, test,
a
which is what
three-
Park was.
right, 3/4 of a year, then they give an Algebra 1 geometry assessment. It would be nice to administer that when they are finished with geometry, like,
Well, that was the whole point when Park
Okay.
came out, they were gonna, because that's what the regents are in New York. And I know the regents are going.
yeah,
away
they're
to New
given,
York
they're
as
given
well,
immediately at the end of the course.
But yeah,
And that was Park's intent.
Yep.
I remember being in the cafeteria years ago
Yeah.
explaining it, but they should give it, and the reason why we're here is because when we went with Park, in our law, and like in our, I guess, in the law in New Jersey, you're supposed to give it a junior test, but they were emphasizing you could take the assessment as a sophomore, as a freshman, and the state was sued. So we've gone back to this. They switched gears, left Park and went back to this.
but our students still are required to do the algebra,
Yep.
the NJSLA and algebra, geometry, and English, ninth grade English as
Ninth
well. So
grade.
they sit for those three tests in
Yep.
ninth and 10th grade.
Well,
And then they have to sit for the junior test as well.
yeah.
Have we looked at how students as a cohort are doing on the NJSLA?
Oh, yes.
In geometry, I guess, algebra?
We'll present that
versus-
to you.
Yeah, like versus how they're doing on this?
Yep.
On the NJ.
Well, this has not been around. This has only been 2 years.
Yeah, we don't have a
Right.
lot of data here yet.
But we do show, well, we'll show you that we are growing in our cohorts. For majority of our cohorts are growing.
On
Um,
NJSLA. Yeah.
Is 2 years enough gonna give us enough data?
Yeah, it's
How-
not gonna
how
give us a
many-
lot.
how-
Yeah,
how
that-
much do we
that's-
need?
We only test our 9th grade students. They don't test in 10th.
All right.
So
Geometry,
there's a
though.
gap there.
Don't they test in geometry?
They do, but we test the law is now 3 through 9.
Oh, so it's only the ninth grade geometry kids?
So
Yep,
those are only the
that's correct.
accelerated.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was
It's been
thinking
reduced.
all geometry. It used to be all geometry.
Yeah, it
So
used to
that-
be.
That would only be the accelerated kids, so the kids that already probably would be
It's,
doing
it's
well.
the accelerated kids in the geometry side, but in the
Right,
algebra side,
but
it's the
it's
kids
the-
that were not accelerated.
Yeah, and that's where we saw our growth was from math 8 to algebra 1. But we can't say percentage or anything
Right,
like
yeah.
that, but
Then you get the whole maturity standpoint.
Well, you do.
Kids are just better students as a sophomore, as a whatever.
and again, I would ask this for the whole state. It would be nice to give it the algebra geometry at the end of geometry. I think you would have, I mean, a long time goes by and when you don't practice finding certain things, they're just not there.
And it makes sense when you look at the state and Verona do much better on the NJGPA in language arts because those standards are repeated over
Yes,
and
and they
over
build.
and over. They build. It's not, they're
Yeah.
not discrete equations and understandings.
Yeah.
It's practices. You continue to practice the language arts standards over and over and over and over and over again.
But and I didn't include 22, but in 2022, when we came back, I mean, we were like at 45% passing.
And yet.
It was really low.
and-
So
and I
we've
might
come a
be-
long way.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
But I might be off here too. If we look nationally, New Jersey students
Yes.
perform abnormally well in the
Yes.
math and science sections on the SAT.
Yes.
So I'm just having a hard time squaring this disparity.
Yeah, we can, when we present AP, we can go over, with, Mr. Wertz, he helps us with this, AP potential and what students actually achieve.
AP
Uh,
potential, it comes from
okay.
how well they do on the PSAT.
And so it's a good predictor. And so sometimes we'll see, well, these students got a 3, like, and which is a passing score, but they're predicted to get that. So it's not like the PSAT is a good predictor for how they will do. Now they can exceed it. They can always be exceeded, but a lot of times you'll see in it, there's been dissertations written on this where they're pretty accurate. So we'll give that lens too, when we present AP in the fall. Because it's interesting, because like where the goal is always to try to get a 3 or higher, because that's like the average. I would say here, what would be good news for us is to continue to increase. And again, ELA is just more predictable. All the teachers, I think, are trying really hard to try to support our students with this. It just, I think Park's point a few years ago, and it did up the rigor, was give this when you're done, because that's what New York has done. My mother-in-law's 82 and she took the Regents exam. All right. So if you take it at the end when you're done, you're going to have a higher success rate. And I think the state would have a higher success rate as well. But who knows the politics of this? We may have something named something different in a couple of years from now. So, yes. And so I guess my final closing is making sure that our students who did not pass, we make sure that they pass it, and creating a math lab for students who we are early detecting, who we think may have trouble with this. We think we're going to have success with these students when they take the test in March, because we're going to try to fill in gaps this fall.
Math lab is really just targeted intervention for students that need it.
Right. So we will have those students most likely take the MAP growth assessments, as well as making our own in-house assessments, and we'll measure their progress and hopefully prepare them more. Because we have some students who take this who are in calculus BC and calculus AB as juniors. So they do pretty well on this, but we have other students like, algebra 2 is a very tough course. And even if you're taking it, it doesn't guarantee success all the time, because they don't even finish algebra 2 before they take this early. They take it in early March, and they say they give it early because of graduation, etc.
Well, the rationale is that so many kids are not going to pass it. We want to give enough time for them to take it again and again.
Yeah.
But if you gave more time, maybe more kids would pass and you
Yeah,
wouldn't
so
have
it's
to. It's like-
timing
It's a
and-
catch-22.
And we say sometimes math, it is another language, and we say it's Greek. Well, still a lot of people, it does look Greek. We're trying not to have that happen, but, and it's confidence
The
with our
Greeks invented
students.
mathematics.
What's
I mean,
that?
The Greeks invented mathematics.
Yeah, they wrote a lot of it. Euclid did a lot of work there.
I learned that in Disney.
Was that Spaceship Earth or?
And the Phoenicians.
Yeah, totally. Well, we get our base 60 from them, from the Babylonians. Okay, so that's all that I have for today. There'll be more discussion when we go over NJSLA. We can't report out. We get feedback. I broke it all down and shared it with Misty Giuseppe and our administrators, but we don't get real feedback until the middle of September. It would be nice if the state's listening to get back the feedback now. So while we have the summer to break down all the
They're not.
information and to get it to our teachers,
They're not listening.
but they're not listening. But in case there's a shot,
There's nobody down there.
I don't think so.
Nobody down there.
So thank you again for listening and all your questions.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Miller. Yes, thank you for coming
Thank
out
you.
as always. Moving on to our agenda, we have our business administrator report by Mr. Cruz.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is enjoying the summer. Although we're at the end of our summer academic session here in Verona, it is a hectic time of year, as Mrs. Giuseppe shared. One of the things that our Buildings and Grounds Department, the B&G team, is working hard preparing our school facilities to welcome our students and staff for this new school year. And in addition, the business office, as well as closing out the 23-24 fiscal year and preparing for our annual audit this fall. In finance, for tonight's agenda, we do have the May Secretary's Treasury report and the transfer report. They're all in agreement. One update that I do want to share that this month is an opportunity for the board to refinance or it's also called a refunding of debt service bond of the 2015 referendum of 9.9 million. This bond has about 7 years left. If the refunding analysis holds and we're able to refund the bond in the spring of 2025, the estimated cost savings to the Verona taxpayers is approximately $430,000 over the course of the remaining 7 years. This is actually excellent news for the taxpayers, as it does alleviate some of the tax levy burden and the increases in those remaining years. I will also continue providing more information in the fall as we get closer to that time frame. Our advisors, Phoenix advisors, will continue to monitor the markets for favorable conditions in this regards. And this concludes my update for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Moving on to committee reports. Did the Finance Committee meet and have anything to report on that Mr. Cruz did not mention?
We did meet, just a couple quick things. We talked about a bit about the POS system for school lunches. I think we decided it's our recommendation to kind of remain with the system, the provider we have now, pending having to go out for bid for the school lunches in general, whether that is we enter the federal school lunch program or not. We don't have to make that determination right now, but we do have to bid those out this year because we're getting to the end of that contract. We talked about the Chromebooks that are being purchased. That's that. And then there was a balance, about approximately $140,000 balance in the referendum budget line. So right now, our recommendation, the committee recommendation, was to kind of hold it, see what happens with the playgrounds, just in case there's any sort of funds that we may have to contribute as part of the potential settlement. If not, Mr. Cruz says we can just kind of absorb that back into our grounds, capital improvements, our capital funds, and use those throughout the district as needed. And I think that is it, unless there's something I missed.
The point of sale provider was that and the balance. So yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Moving on, no other committees met, so we're going to move on to our public comments on agenda action items only if there's something we are voting on. Please state your name and come to the podium, and you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing none, we're moving on to discussion items. Anyone have anything new or old business that they would like to mention?
I was just real happy to see the life skills folks and their plant sale at the high school was last week. And not so much, I mean, I was excited to get the plants at a nice bargain, but I did have the opportunity to see the life skills people in action. The students were marking up the plants and then working with the sale and the handling of just the basic commerce. So it was just a really well orchestrated event, and I was just really happy to see the engagement. The students there were really plugged into it, so it was fun.
Thank you. I just want to add, I attended the Willy Wonka Summer Music Program last week on Wednesday evening here at the high school from our students. I just have to say, what an amazing performance. The students are just incredible, the amount of talent, but the amount of work that they put in like 3.5 weeks. And Mr. Morden and his wife, Mrs. Morden, and their dedication to the program. Mrs. J, our retired art teacher, for designing all the artwork, and music teachers and everyone. It's just,
Mr. Munoz.
it was incredible to be there. The sets, the costumes, just everything. The students were just really, really amazing. Oompa Loompas, it was just adorable. And so thank you to everyone that put everything they put into that, because summer music is really,
Yeah.
really incredible. And I hope to see, it continue. And even though with Mr. Morden retiring, he
He's now
said
retired, it doesn't
he
seem
said
like
he's
it.
still going to continue to do the summer music program. So again, kudos to everyone on that. And anyone else have anything?
I just wanted to, because I got an email about it, the fall sports physical forms are due, and the participation forms are out and have to be filled in. So if you are a
And
parent,
sports physicals have changed.
Yes,
The
they have- yeah.
NJSIAA made a change. So I know Mrs. Palmarisi put out a pretty in-depth letter
Yes.
to the
Mhm.
sports parents indicating that the changes are happening. It's not our change, it's
Right.
the NJSIAA's change.
yes, so yeah, we had, my doctor was like, oh, this is a new form.
Yeah, it's a new form.
It's a new form. So yeah, so those are out, and if you have a child who participates, who's thinking of participating in a fall sport, you really got to get on top of that, because you could miss the boat.
Yes. Thank you. That's an important announcement. Anything else? Okay, moving on to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence? None? Great. Moving on to our resolutions. Starting with our personnel resolutions, I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions A1 through A6.
So moved. Oh, second.
Motion by Mr. Waka, seconded by Mr. Boone. Are there any discussions? Seeing none, Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes,
Mrs. Farrar,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our education resolutions. I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions B1 through B15.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Boone, second by Mrs. Rosella. Are there any discussions?
I have some questions about B15.
Yeah.
Um,
I can answer those. hopefully.
okay, I know we talked about this last year. There's some very low numbers,
Mhm.
and I was actually trying to look back to see if they were the same courses, but I couldn't find my agenda from last.
Some of them are, some of them are.
Okay.
Most of them are not.
Okay. I just, I'm hesitant, and I see that it looks like some of them are doubled or tripled up.
Yeah, so those are the ones that will run because it's one class period. So like music theory, AP music theory and music capstone were on the list last year because they tend to run low, but they're all taught in the same period. So you add up 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's close to 10. And AP music theory is a capstone course, right? So it's something that we want to continue to offer. Maybe let me go through some of the things that I saw, and I might answer your question before you ask it. So Latino literature And I just have to open up something here so I can have the information that I need. So there are true crime, which we mentioned last meeting, creative writing, humor and literature, monsters and literature, banned books, Latino literature, and page to screen. These are new courses called selectives. So this is the first time we're running them, and selectives are not electives, but they are optional second half of the year courses for students that are taking English 4. So instead of 5 credits of English 4, which satisfies the requirements for the NJSLA, they'll have 2.5 credits of English 4 that satisfy certain standards, and then these areas of interest. So we're hoping to really give kids a great opportunity to take something that they really like versus, a year of that every student's doing the same thing. So adding these selectives don't change the number of 6 periods that we need, nor do they change the number of teachers that we need. So they were cost neutral to the district. I do see, if you don't have these numbers, but I can tell you true crime is the winner with 97 students registered. So it would be easy to, yeah. We could certainly look at whether or not those 5 students in the power of the pen would like to go into one of the other courses. There's so many sections of true crime, and creative writing has 45 students registered. Humor and literature has 1 section at 22 students. Monsters and literature has 1 section at 15 students. And then page to screen has 3 sections at 38 students. So we have some areas that you would have similar sections, periods, so that students wouldn't have to change their whole course load to get into a section. But what that's going to do is it's going to, what we would do then is we would go back to those other courses and potentially split our larger courses so that teachers are not part-time now, right?
Right.
But and we certainly have large enough classes to do that. So that's the selective. So that was the first 2. Drama and theater arts. These are, so drama 5 is concerning. Theater arts is a semester 2. So there is time to encourage kids into that. The board can, make those decisions as to what to do, whether you want to approve those small sections. That's why we're here. That's why the policy was written. The teacher that teaches that does have some other sections that are larger, so it's not going to affect that person's schedule. AP Chinese language and culture, that was one of them last year that was running at 2. So it's running at 9 now, which is close to 10. And I would suggest that the board run this. So let's talk French, because French is suffering throughout the district, and the French problem actually begins at HBW. We only have 6 students in 6th grade that opted for French. So the greater discussion over the next several years is French phasing itself out of our schools, and do we have to look to see if that's still a viable option for our students? So French 1 having 3 students. This was a conversation that occurred with our high school French teacher, the director of school counseling, Mr. Cogdill, and she has offered to, and it should say it here, it does not, but French 4 honors and AP 5 language and culture are being taught in the same period.
Okay.
And she offered, the teacher offered to do that in order to keep the section of 3 in hopes to bolster and to bring more kids into French 2 the following year. We generally don't offer French 1 at the high school level because kids come out of, HBW having completed French 1.
I'm disinclined, excuse me, I am inclined to leave the French program open because it does feel like it's a direct result of the issues at HBW. And if
Well, we had a
fix-
teacher on,
Right.
she on leave that we could not replace for many weeks. So those students are not feeling comfortable going into French 2.
So looking longer term, if we have have that pipeline coming, you know, even if it's not this year, I just feel inclined to keep that door open. If we can build that back up, and that's.
I agree with you. And so that's 2 years in a row. Two different teachers have had long-term leaves from the French program at HBW. So what this does is it allows those first 3 students to feel more comfortable taking French 1 and maybe staying in the program. And it also allows those students that registered for French 2 that find French 2 too difficult for them, a place to move if they need to and stay in French.
Yeah, I'd just rather keep that.
Do you know how many kids we have in French too? That's the only one that's not on this.
Yeah,
It's
I-
over 10, it's 10 or more. I assume.
It's, yeah, more.
Yeah,
Yeah. I can tell you in 2 seconds. Let me just log in. Sorry, double authentication.
LTI would be proud.
So French 2 has 15 students. French 3, oh, it's here, so we
It's
see,
4. It's 4.
yeah, well, actually, no, French 3 has 28 in total. There's a section of 24 and a section of 4, and we're still looking at balancing.
It's-
But there was a lot of singletons. Those kids were, so they were, it's hard to balance that, but we're still working on balancing. So there's 20 across French 3, there's 28 students.
Fairly helpful.
Yeah, it's fairly healthy.
Mhm. Okay.
The next, low course is, graphic design, image development, and digital publishing. Digital publishing is our yearbook program. So I think that one has to run with 9 students, and we generally, see some kids that move into it, yeah. And the others are all running during separate periods. So, if I miss some,
sorry.
fabrication and design. So fabrication and design 1 in semester 1 has 20 total students. So this is one of the smaller sections. We do believe that with 20 students in total, we can encourage more students into that and try to balance that other section.
That's a popular class. It's hard to get.
It is.
Sometimes, so.
It
Yeah.
is.
I think the only one that is kind of on the bubble is drama, really,
Is-
right?
it-
Drama.
Question I have with that, and I mean, we have an awesome theater and arts
Yeah.
program here. The question, playing devil's advocate, is can we fulfill those students' needs by offering that as a club? If we can't do it as a class.
We already have a club, a
Yeah.
drama
Right,
club.
right. But so what's the
The class,
difference?
well, it's a class, they
Yeah.
have to do.
Well, but,
they-
right, but
That's they, that sounded
Maybe I
glib.
didn't
I'm
ask the
sorry, that
question right.
sounded glib, but, my daughter did take it last year and she will probably be mad at me if I say no to it. But it's, they do a lot of improv work, they do.
in the class.
Yeah, they do like student directing of little plays and stuff like that in the class.
Well, you can still do that from my feeble memory, I believe you can still do that in the club environment.
Yeah.
Correct?
You can, but just know if we're only talking about this 1 or 2 half-year courses,
Yeah.
this is a net no cost to us.
Right.
We
Yeah.
don't gain
Okay.
anything back if
Right.
we don't, if
And-
we don't run it, we don't gain it back.
Right, and if I recall, I mean, last year, I don't think either of these courses were on our list.
I don't believe they were.
So it might just be kind of a blip.
Well, you know what? We are offering more electives.
Yeah.
You know, so we're seeing a watering down in some of the electives.
Mhm.
In an effort to not only have digital imaging electives, because that's really what the high school had limited.
Mhm.
Now we have the selectives, although that's not taking out of our electives because that's a second half of a required course.
Mhm.
But we have begun to offer some new electives in STEM, et cetera, that might be watering it down. And maybe we need to do a better job selling these courses. You
I have
know,
a quick question.
yeah.
I'm sorry. And from a curriculum lens, are there curriculums written for each of these new selectives
They're
or
on the agenda
electives?
to be approved this evening. They're working on them, yes. We're approving the payment of those curriculum. tonight.
Okay, so, right, so then, um, so it's a net cost plus the curriculum writing and implementation, right? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this,
So curriculum the only cost is the actual curriculum writing.
the writing of it,
Whatever
okay.
textbooks we would need to support these textbooks or in this case, it's probably not going to be textbooks. It's going to be
So then so what I'm wondering is each year when we're seeing these new electives, those curriculums are being written. Are we also, and forgive me, because I did forget other than some of the Mandarin classes from last year, but are we also like it seems like there's a lot of new electives and maybe I'm wrong here, but are we bringing in new electives each year or are we being kind of strategic in offering some of the same electives year after year so that if a student is in their sophomore year and they can't take it, they're taking in their junior, we're reusing that curriculum, or is that how this works, or is it new each year?
if the course is being offered for the first time, we write the curriculum once, and then we put it on a 5-year cycle to see if it needs to be changed over the 5-year period.
So are we offering, I guess that's my question. So we're offering that elective over the course of the 5 years while we have it? Is that how we've been
Yes,
typically
yeah, and
doing
many
it?
of our electives have been offered for 10 or more years, depending on if a course starts to die, so we're not seeing enough interest, they may put it into retirement and offer something else. We did offer a new course last year in robotics for the first time. The fact that we didn't have a high school robotics level was in, being a science person was unacceptable. So I'm glad we offered that. But we also offered game development last year.
So then it's really just these selectives
It's just
that
the
are
selectives
really
that are
fully new this year.
This year, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, and no, and AP Studio Art.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella, Mrs. Farrar,
Yes,
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you. Moving on to our athletics and co-curricular resolutions. I need a motion to approve resolutions C1 through C4.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Frizella, seconded by Mr.
Second.
Boone. Any discussion? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
yes,
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to facilities. I need a motion to approve resolution D1.
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Waka, seconded by
I'll second it.
Mrs. Frizella. Are there any discussion? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
yes,
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to finance, I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions E1 through E7.
So,
Motion by Mr. Boone, seconded by
I'll
Me.
second.
Mrs. Frizella. Are there any discussion? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella,
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
yes,
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes,
Mr. Boone.
yes.
Motion carries.
thank you. We do not have any resolutions for governance and policy, so we are going to move on to our public comment portion of the meeting. If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please approach the podium. Once recognized, please state your first and last name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. There will be no cross dialogue during this public portion. If there is a question that can be answered, only the superintendent, attorney, or president will respond, and will do so at the end of the comments. You will be granted 1 time to speak, and there's a total of a limit of 1 hour for public participation. Podium. No one's coming? Seeing none, we are going to adjourn our meeting. Our next, I need a motion first to, thank you. Liz. Motion by Mrs. Rosella, seconded by Mr. Boone. Thank you. Our next scheduled public meeting will be held on August 27th, 2024, beginning with confidential session at 6 p.m., public session at 7 p.m. in the Verona High School Learning Commons. It is 8:26 p.m. and I am adjourning the meeting, and I wish everyone a good rest of the summer.
Let's go Mets.
Oh, everyone, please, if I need a
The
vote.
Roll call?
Roll
or-
call. Oh, everyone, all
All
in favor?
Yeah, that's it.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Feel better, Mrs. Farrar.